I did a little survey recently on Instagram stories asking if people hated downward facing dog, and actually got a lot of yes responses to it. For me personally, downward facing dog is one of my favorite yoga poses. I pretty much can't make it through a class or a day without at least one. It's just a great full body stretch. But looking back to when I was a beginner, I realized it was such a struggle sometimes, and it took a long time for me to be comfortable with doing the pose and finding my comfort zone within my body. So today I thought I would just break it down just a little bit and give a little bit of hints and maybe some pointers and tricks that'll help you start to maybe enjoy isn't the right word, but maybe start to appreciate the pose and what kind of stretch it gives for your body. Sometimes it's labeled as a dynamic resting pose, which kind of makes sense because you do kind of come into it, and if you find your zone and the activation, it does kind of give your body a rest in the middle of like vinyasa and moving around, but it also makes your body work as well. So we're going to start today with however you're seated, whatever you're comfortable, and just give your wrists a little bit of a shake out. You can start to do some circles. The wrists actually take a lot of pressure in yoga, especially downward facing dog, so wrist warm-ups are very, very important. Clasp your hands together and just kind of move them a bit like this. You can change directions. And then let's go back to shaking it out a little bit. So let's come to our mat in tabletop. And just hands down on the mat. Try and stack your wrists over your shoulders. And feel the grip in your mat right now. You want to be pushing with the whole of your palm. So your thumb and index finger, you can feel those in the mat, your other fingertips, your first row of knuckles, the side of your palm, the back of your palm, all of it. So just kind of come to grips with that and move around a little bit. You can start to go back and forth. And while you're pushing your hand into the mat, make sure you feel like you're pushing the mat away. That's one of the mistakes sometimes made when we first start, is we kind of sink into everything, which puts a lot of pressure on the wrists. And just as you move back and forth, start to pick up the hand a little bit. All this is helping us warm up our wrists, and warming up your wrists will help your downward dogs feel a little bit better. It'll also help strengthen your wrists as well. So let's come back to center, and wrapping your triceps, probably a cue you hear sometimes as well in downward facing dog or in plank. And what that essentially means, to break it down easily, is the ditch of your elbow, this little part right here, you're gonna face it forward. So let's just try that. And remember that your elbows can have a slight bend in them. You don't want to lock out your joints at all. And just turn, face it forward. Now let's incorporate that pushing away the mat feel and wrapping the triceps. Across the top of your shoulders, you should feel like your shoulder blades are kind of opening up, like your back's opening up a little bit this way. You don't want to be up like this, just a nice flat back, but you want to feel your shoulder blades working as well. So hopefully that's feeling a little bit better in the upper body. Cool, so we can kind of relax that for a second. And now I'm going to tuck our toes under while we're kneeling. This could feel a bit like your whole foot is on fire right now. That's okay, we're just giving it a nice foot stretch. You can always come up onto your knees if it's a bit too intense. And again, we're going to, sorry, I had a hair in my mouth. We're going to plant our hands. So shoulders and wrists stacked, fingers, palm gripping into the mat. Really reach into that index finger and thumb, and first two fingers are pointing straight ahead. Wrap those triceps And you can untuck your feet and just move your knees back ever so slightly so they're slightly behind your hips and not stacked underneath. Now curl under your toes. So you're reaching into the mat using the ball of your foot, and we're just going to slightly lift the knees, let them hover, and let it back down. Lift the knees, let it hover, and back down. Remember your upper body, wrap those triceps, push the ground away from you. Look down in between your hands, lift your knees, back down. Let that relax a little bit. You can shake out your wrists. And now we're going to lift the whole way up into our first downward facing dog. So, hands back under your shoulders, wrists, give them a little bit of shake out. Palms grip the mat, elbows start to shine forward, toes tuck under, slowly lift so that your stomach and thighs are touching and your bum's in the air and you're kind of in this funny little shape. Your hips should be slightly hip width apart, and look back kind of between your calves and your ankles, like in that general like direction or width of your legs. Take a deep breath here and exhale back down. Probably felt a little bit of strength in that. So this time we're going to try lifting the whole way up. One of the biggest things with downward facing dog is people think that your legs need to be straight, and that's completely not true. A lot of times you get a much better stretch with your knees bent. For someone like me whose knees tend to hyperextend, my heels can touch the mat and my legs can be perfectly straight, but I'm not actually getting a stretch at all. It's just because that's how my legs are made. So for me, I like to keep my knees slightly bent. So let's start again from the top. Fingers grip the mat, full palm, wrap the triceps. Push your bum back towards your heels, belly to thighs, and slowly start to lift up. See how I'm keeping my knees bent? I'm pushing into my hands, trying to flatten my back and shine my bum up towards the sky. And you can start to wiggle your feet a little bit, take your dog for a walk. Take a deep breath here and let it back down. Does that feel a little bit more comfortable? You can start to adjust the length you need between your hands and your feet as well. Everyone's body is different. Some people, like me, I have very long arms. Some people might have long legs and shorter arms, so you need to adjust a little bit. But you start, after practicing for a little while and just practicing downward dog on its own, you start to find your zone, a little bit more comfort in it, and it makes it easier and you're under less pressure to figure that out during a class. So let's try that again. Plant your hands, push the mat away, wrap the triceps, bum back slowly towards the heels and lift up towards the sky. And see, I like to move my feet to find where they're most comfortable, usually hip width apart. If you have a big belly, like I do, and sometimes just when I feel like making my life a little bit easier, you can widen your feet a little bit so you have more space for your belly. Again, we're trying to make the pose work for us, not force our bodies into the pose. So play with the distance between your feet. See what's most comfortable. You don't want to go narrow, like less than hip width, but sometimes it's nice to go a little bit wider. And like I said, keep those knees bent. And you should really feel your armpits stretching out, your back. You should feel the muscles in your bum, along the back of your legs, your hamstrings working as well. Take another breath here and exhale, come back down. So if you do have a bit more flexibility and you think that maybe letting your heels go towards the mat a little bit more or your legs straightening out a little bit more might work for your body, we can do that as well. So back to our Hand position, elbows wrapping forward, feet tucked under, hips towards your heels, and slowly start to rise up. So right here, you can see that my legs are straight, my heels are touching the mat, but my legs are kind of curving back because they hyperextend that way. And that's not actually getting me a stretch, that's actually putting stress on my joints. So I have a slight micro bend in my knees, and one heel to the mat, two heel to the mat. So I've got both of them, and you can see it's a nice tight V shape. And this is usually good when warmed up. But if you're not completely warmed up, you can again bend your knees for belly to thigh contact and really reach those hips up towards the sky. If you need a little bit longer, you can take a slightly longer dog to get that nice stretch for you. So find what works for you. You can even try, if your upper body and shoulders are really tight, you can even try some blocks. It might feel a little bit weird at first, but you can put some blocks or some books down. I like to put my hand over the edge of the blocks and really grip them this way and just go up and into my downward facing dog this way. My back between like my bum and my fingertips, you can just feel all the length there. My armpits feel really open, and it gives me a little bit of freedom to figure out a little bit more with my legs, like which distance I want them, and my knees, so I can slightly bend my knees, my heels reaching the mat. But just play around what works best for you. Not everybody is going to love downward facing dog. It's a hard working pose. It takes a little while to get used to, and it's in every yoga class sometimes, and sometimes it's really hard work. But hopefully this will just help you just enjoy it a little bit more and start to feel the stretch and feel how it should be working for you. If you have any questions or comments, you can always drop me a message either here or on Instagram. My email is also in the comments. Thanks so much. Hopefully you found this tutorial useful, and maybe downward dog is starting to feel a little bit better for you. If you like this video, give it a like, and you can also subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every week. Thanks so much.